Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Well, good evening and welcome once again to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24, where we shatter the employment law myths. We make you smarter, your workplace rights. That's what we teach you every week. They're pretty robust, but if you don't know about them, you can't take advantage of them, right? I'm John Scholes. Joining us momentarily, Lior Samfiru, employment lawyer from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Anytime you want to reach out to Lior and his team, you are welcome. In fact, encouraged to do so. The number right off the top, 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca, or just the website too, EmploymentLawyer.ca. Works well. You can go there at your leisure anytime. A little later on the show, the main topic is going to be everything you need to know about forced resignations. That is on the way, so stick around for it. We'll get to some phone calls from our long-running radio shows as well, but we always get warmed up, get things going, Lior, with a week that was our case of the day. Welcome to the show once again, pal. How are you? What do you got for us this week?
Hey, John, absolutely wonderful to be back here to talk about employment law and to try to help as many people as possible. Now, every single time this show airs on CP24, right after, get a lot of calls, a lot of emails from people that have watched this show, and it raised some questions for them, or it answered some questions for them, and they wanted to follow up with them. And it tells me that the message is coming across. We're able to try to educate people about employment law, to give you that armor that you need to protect yourself when it comes to your workplace rights. Whether you lost your job and you want to know what to do, whether your job has changed and you want to know how to deal with that. Maybe you're being mistreated in the workplace. Maybe you're being discriminated against. We cover these topics on the show every single week. So when you watch us, you'll be able to know what to do if that ever happens to you. It's so important that we all understand our rights in the workplace. And it's not just an issue that happens with small employers. Large employers often get things right. And my case that I want to talk about is a great example of that. I spoke with a gentleman who had been let go from a large tech company. They were letting a bunch of people go. They were kind of switching over to AI, like a lot of companies are. And because of that, quite a few people were being let go. Now, that company had used a formula of 2.5 weeks severance per year of service for all its employees. It used a one-size-fits-all formula to calculate his severance. Well, this individual and many of his colleagues, when they saw that formula, they thought, well, I guess it makes sense because everyone is treated the same. Despite this, he did the right thing and he called me. Now, this person had worked for this company for 5 years. So the formula for him was somewhere around 12 weeks pay that they've offered him, except that was wrong. What he was really owed was right around 8 months of severance. So 3 times essentially what he was offered. And that's because the law is quite generous when it comes to severance. And there's no formula of a week per year of service or 2 weeks per year of service. And it doesn't matter what everyone else got. It's your responsibility to ensure that your rights are followed, that your rights are protected. Whether someone else accepts it or not does not matter. Thankfully, because he called me, I'm now helping him negotiate and getting his proper severance. And in fact, he's told a number of his colleagues to do the same and call me. But the message here is very clear for you at home. When it comes to employment law rights, certainly when it comes to severance, you cannot trust that the company is doing it right. It's your job to determine whether it's right. It's your job to make sure you get what you're owed. And a good place to always start is watching the show or calling or emailing me, and I'll help.
You bet. Good stuff, Lior, to get us warmed up there. As mentioned off the top, EmploymentLawyer.ca. That is the website. Hit the media tab when you're on your smartphone, and you'll find links to our long-running radio shows as well. You can always call 1-888-861-4555 for more information as well. Want to get to one of our radio show phone calls, Lior? We get them across the country. They're fantastic. Our listeners and viewers call in. They're always asking questions, so let's roll into that and see what we get.
I worked for the same company for almost 7 years. It's a father-son partners. Son didn't want me around, so I took a layoff from him, and I settled for a very cheap severance package. I took 1 week per year severance. The father wants me to continue working for him on a part-time basis. I was told I have to pay the severance back if I go back to work for the company. That's what the lady that does their bookkeeping and their accounting and stuff said.
So this is an interesting situation, but one that I've seen before. So remember, the company doesn't have to hire him back once they let him go. So if they're going to bring him back, they can decide the basis on which they're going to bring him back. They can say, we'll bring you back, but only if you pay your severance back. He can say, no, I'm not going to do that and not come back. Or he can choose to pay his severance and go back to work. So that's for him and the company to decide. There's nothing illegal about that. The real problem, the big issue in this case, is that after 7 years of employment, he accepted only 7 weeks of severance, completely inadequate. That's the issue. He was wrongfully dismissed because he was owed more severance. So what was he really owed? Let me show you how you can find out yourself in this situation or in your situation. All you do is you go to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca and you use our severance calculator tool. Let's use it right now and let's see what this person should have received. So we know he's been there for 7 years. He was offered 7 weeks severance. Well, what he was owed is probably about 7 months of severance, between 6 to 8 months of severance. So he received a terrible severance offer. If he didn't sign something for it, he can still pursue it. If he did, unfortunately, it's bad news. But that's why we have the severance calculator. Again, you can find it at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca so that you don't lose out on monies that you're owed. So check it out for yourself.
All right, Lior, good start. Let's take a short break, pal. And when we come back, on the other side, the main topic, as mentioned, everything you need to know about forced resignations. I'll sign you off here for a moment with the phone number, 1-888-861-4555. And that email anytime is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. Lots more Ask a Lawyer coming up right here on CP24. Hang around.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes, Lior Samfiru. Reach out anytime to Lior and his amazing team. They're always ready to talk to you. Encourage you to call. As a matter of fact, 1-888-861-4555. Ask@employmentlawyer.ca. That is the email address. Okay, as mentioned, main topic. Everything you need to know about forced resignations. We're going to open this up to you and give you some talking points, Lior, and answer all the questions. First of all, the obvious one, what is a resignation? And do you have to resign at age 65 in Canada? A lot of people think you do, right?
So let's be very clear. A resignation is something that an employee does on their own, voluntarily and unilaterally. So if you choose on your own to leave your job, no one's forcing you, no one's pressuring you, no one is putting that proverbial gun to your head, you do it on your own, then you've resigned. And that's absolutely fine. You can do that whenever you want. No one can stop you. But it has to be unilateral, where it's not a resignation if someone forced you to do it, which we'll talk about. That's not a resignation. That's something completely different. But the other thing is, we do not have mandatory retirement. You do not have to retire at 65 or at any other age. You can work till 85 or beyond if that's what you want. And no one can tell you to resign, force you to resign, even imply that you should resign. So remember, work as long as you want to. No one can stop you from doing that.
You know, Leo, I often hear people say, I'd rather resign than be let go because I don't want that blemish on my record, which is there permanently. Is that true? Are you better to get fired than to resign rather than to get fired?
I hear that very often. Yeah. People say, well, I don't want to be let go, so I'm going to resign. It's better to resign. Absolutely not. Nonsense. It's not better to resign. There's no record. There's no vault where records are kept in terms of why you were let go. Not at all. And here's why it's better to be let go. Because if you resign, then you're not going to get severance. You're not going to get EI. Why would you want to do that? Whereas if you're let go, you get severance. That could be as much as 2 years' pay. You get EI. That could be as much as a year's pay. So absolutely not. Nonsense. No, do not resign unless it's voluntary, unless you've decided you're leaving or you want to go somewhere else. It's not better to resign. Never.
We are talking about forced resignations. That's the main topic on the show tonight. You often hear people say, my boss said, have your resignation on my desk tomorrow. Resign or else. You often hear that. Is that should happen? What should you say if someone, your boss, your employer tells you that?
Well, if your employer says, hey, you're not working here anymore, but I want you to resign, well, guess what? That's a termination because your boss has decided that you're not going to work there. So why would you give them the gift of resigning in that situation and walking away from severance? No, a forced resignation really is a termination of your employment, meaning you are owed severance because it's not voluntary anymore. So what you should do if your employer says, well, I expect you to resign, the answer should be, well, that's very nice, but I'm not resigning. I'm going to continue working until you tell me not to. And if the company wants to let you go, they can, but they're going to have to pay you full severance. So do not resign. Do not resign just because the company wants you to. Do not resign if it's forced.
If I've been told, if I've been forced, how do I prove it, right?
So if you've resigned and it's because someone told you, the best way to deal with that is to send someone an email or your boss or a text message saying, well, I resigned today, but it's because you told me I had to, or confirming that I've resigned because you told me I had no choice. What you don't want to be in a situation is where you've resigned because they forced you, but you have no way to prove it. And then the company is going to deny that they forced you. They're going to say you did it voluntarily. So send an email, send a text message. If you did resign because someone forced you, let's talk right away. I can help you deal with that, but you don't want to sit on your rights. You want to deal with it as soon as possible.
Let me ask you one more, Leo. What happens if an employee resigns because maybe something happened in the workplace? It's untenable. They can't work there anymore. It's become very uncomfortable. How do they navigate that?
So we have a name for this in a situation where you resign because your employer did something to you. They mistreated you. They changed your job. They cut your pay. You feel like you have no choice. Well, we call that constructive dismissal. Even though you're leaving, the law says, no, not so fast. That is a termination still. So if you can establish that you resigned because of something your employer did, the law considers that to be a termination. The law says you still get paid your full severance up to 2 years' pay, just like as if the company let you go. The key here, though, is to deal with it quickly. If you've resigned because something happens, we need to talk today, right away. Please don't walk away from your rights by sitting on them and waiting for too long.
Okay, good stuff. Let's keep going. Again, EmploymentLawyer.ca on your smartphone. Remember, go there, go down the media tab, open it up, and you'll find links to our long-running radio shows for the past 10 years. Leo and I have been more than 10 years now across the country. Let's grab another phone call, Leo, from one of our radio shows. Talk about it.
I was laid off by an employer. I never pursued it. It was actually about 4 to 5 years ago. Is it something that I could still pursue now, or is there a time period?
You're shaking your head, and for good reason, John. And this is the type of call or email that I get several times a week, unfortunately. People realize, wait a second, I had all these entitlements. I wanted to pursue them, and I still want to pursue them, but it's been a few years now. Can I do it? Well, unfortunately, in this situation, he cannot. They said it's been 4 to 5 years. There's a 2-year limitation period, only 2 years. It's not 2 years in a day or 2 years in an hour. It's exactly 2 years. So you don't, as I said before, don't want to sit on your rights, especially when it comes to losing your job. If you lost your job, let's talk now. Don't wait. Don't forget about it. It's important that you stand up for your rights because chances are, whatever you've been offered, it's probably only a fraction of what you're owed.
We will grab another phone call from one of our radio shows, guys, but we got to take a short break. We're going to do that now. In the meantime, here's that number and email again to reach out to Lior anytime. Always encouraged to do so, right? 1-888-861-4555 and ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Ask a Lawyer continues. This is CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Another reminder to reach out to Lior anytime. Do not hesitate. The phone number always 1-888-861-4555. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. And EmploymentLawyer.ca is the website, the firm website, the media tab, radio shows, which, by the way, if you're in the GTA, Sundays 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010, you'll catch Lior and I doing our thing there. All right, Leora, I called for it before the break. Let's get to phone call number 3. Talk about it.
I have a friend who's been a bank employee for around 25 years. She's in her early 50s. The situation is that the bank eliminated her position. It was a customer service role in essence. Now they basically have her coming in and just doing whatever is required day to day, and she's getting instructions by the day. So I just want to know, how long could she go with going along with whatever they say, and she just doing random day-to-day activities before it's not considered a constructive dismissal? Like, maybe how long does she have to treat it as a constructive dismissal?
And he's absolutely right. This is a constructive dismissal. A constructive dismissal happens when your employer makes significant changes to the terms of your employment. So she used to have a customer service role. That was eliminated. Now they just find stuff to do for her for day-to-day. Not something they can do. It's a constructive dismissal. She can treat it as a termination. She doesn't have to continue working. But the key here, as this person identified, is you have to act quickly. You can't continue doing this new role for any period of time, because then you're considered to have accepted it. She probably has 3, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 5 on the high-end weeks of being able to do something about it. So she has to act now and say, no, enough is enough, I'm leaving, and treating this as a constructive dismissal. Well, the next question then becomes, if it is a constructive dismissal, what is she owed? How much severance does the company have to pay her? Well, we're going to go back to EmploymentLawyer.ca. We're going to use the severance calculator tool so you can see how easy it is to find out what you're owed. So she is in her 50s, mid-50s, in a customer service role, been there for 25 years. Well, if it's a constructive dismissal, she's owed severance, and you can see that she's owed up to 22 months of pay. 22 months, that's almost almost 2 years pay that she's owed. But again, she has to act quickly. Same with you at home. If your terms of employment are changing, you have to act right away.
Let's grab an email as we continue on here, Leora. It's ask@employmentlawyer.ca. It goes like this. Leora, I was fired for cause by my employer based on an untrue allegation from a coworker. I told the company that I had proof what he said was incorrect, but they refused to take a look. What should I do now?
Well, a company can't just fire someone for cause without conducting a proper investigation, without having all their facts right, and knowing that the person that's been accused of doing something, in fact, did it. Keep in mind, the company has to prove that they had cause. The company has to prove that the person did what they said that he did. The individual doesn't have to disprove that. So in this case, if he didn't do what he was alleged to have done and he hasn't been paid severance, that's a wrongful dismissal. So I would tell him to call me, we'll deal with that. If you didn't do what the company said, then the company will never be able to prove it. Remember, it's very difficult, almost impossible sometimes, to prove cause. It's such a high standard. So unless you did something terrible, and unless the company can prove that you did something terrible, it's not going to be a termination for cause, and you're going to be owed your full severance.
Let's grab one more short break, and on the other side, we'll talk about the concept of probation and sick leave. Here is a number to reach Leora and his team anytime. Again, 1-888-861-4555. That email that we just read from ask@employmentlawyer.ca. This is Ask a Lawyer on CP24. There's more coming up. Stick around.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
You bet. This is Ask a Lawyer on CP24. Here, John Scholes, along with Leora Sanfru, EmploymentLawyer.ca. The phone number, 1-888-861-4555. Email, always ask@employmentlawyer.ca. In addition to all that, and practicing law sometimes, Leora also does a lot of live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. You want to join that show at stlawyers.ca. Let's get to one of the questions from that. Leora says, fell ill during my 6-month probation period. Can I be let go while I'm on sick leave?
So short question, but quite a few things to unpack here. So the first thing is the fact that a probationary period, really for all intents and purposes, cannot last longer than 3 months. Okay, and that's because the only period of time during which you can be let go without any compensation is 3 months. That can't be 4, 5, or 6 months. So to say that you're on a 6-month probationary period, or for the company to do that, they're really not doing anything. It kind of becomes meaningless. So right off the bat, I wouldn't worry about that probation. So number one, probation also has to be in an employment agreement. You're not on probation just because you started a new job. Very important to understand that. But of course, the key here is this: you cannot be let go because you are sick. You cannot be let go if you have a disability. You cannot be let go if you need to take time off to get better. That's illegal. That's a violation of our human rights legislation here. So that's why it's so important for the company not to pick on those and penalize those that are sick. And the company may say, hey, we didn't have enough time to evaluate you because you were off for a couple of months being sick. Well, that all that means is the company has to give the person more time to prove themselves. They cannot let someone go because they're sick. In fact, you cannot be let go if you're sick, even if that's one of the reasons or part of the reason why you were let go. It doesn't have to be the only reason for it to be illegal. So what happens if you're sick, if you're unable to work? Work on getting better. Follow your doctor's advice, do what you need to do to get better, and honestly, don't worry about your job. Worry about your job when you've been cleared to return to work. When the company, when it's time to come back to work, you contact the company, and if they do anything other than take you back, you call me. Their obligation then is to make all efforts to bring you back to the same job, same pay. If they don't, we need to talk about it. You could be looking at a wrongful dismissal. You could be looking at a human rights violation. You could be looking at an employment standards violation. So you have a lot of rights when you're sick if the company lets you go.
So good stuff there, Leo. Always complete answers. You want to reach out for more beyond the half hour of the show, you can do so. Here's the phone number as we wrap it up for another evening: 1-888-861-4555. That email is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. You can always use pocket@employmentlawyer.ca. You will have complete and free access to what we call the severance calculator. You type your information in, it'll give you the real number as to what you are owed. Again, pocket@employmentlawyer.ca. And you'll catch Ask a Lawyer right here on CP24 every Wednesday at 9:30. And the radio show, don't forget about that, across the country and here in the GTA, Sundays at 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010. Thank you so much for tuning in and your contributions weekly to the show. And we'll catch you next week once again here on Ask a Lawyer.